Monsters, mayhem, and Drew Goddard. They always seem to kind of go together for some unexplained reason. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and I'm very excited to have screenwriter Drew Goddard with us today to talk about his audacious feature film debut, Cloverfield. Drew's a longtime genre favorite with a lot of fans based on his television screenwriting for Buffy, Angel, Alias, and now Lost, and it really meant a lot for us to have him stop by for a chat. But remember, if you dig this podcast, don't forget to look for the latest issue of Creative Screenwriting Magazine, which is filled with interviews from today's top screenwriters. Creative Screenwriting Magazine is sold at Barnes & Noble and Borders bookshops throughout North America, Canada, and Western Europe. To find out more about our latest issue and how to subscribe for an incredibly low price, visit www.creativescreenwriting.com. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right onto the stage of our packed screening of Cloverfield right after I introduce screenwriter Drew Goddard.
Here's your mic. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you, guys.
We rarely do announcements at the beginning of a Q&A, but while everybody was in this film, the WGA did announce that as of today, the strike is over. Very happy about that. Tell us what your strike experience was. Just starting there, that wasn't where I was planning to start, but
Sure.
What was it like for you? Because you read on Lost and you were in the middle of that whole thing.
Yeah, we really just dropped right in the middle of the season. So we had finished episode 8, and we were supposed to do 16 episodes, and the strike happened, and so we just walked out right in the middle of the season. And so, and since then, it's just been spending time on the line, I guess, like most other writers, you know.
How many episodes are going to come back now, or do you guys even know yet?
It looks like it's still being worked out, so don't quote me on this, but it looks like the plan is to do 4 or 5 more, because that's the maximum we can. We're going to do the maximum we can physically get done before Sweeps is over, which is in May, so we're going to do our best to get the most episodes done.
Cool. Well, as is our tradition, here's your own copy of Creative Screenwriting Magazine.
Thank you.
You're like page 57, I think.
Oh, that's exciting.
Indeed.
Oh, Mom's going to love this one.
Exactly. That's going to be framed in the house. But yeah, you can put that right there. So, all right, we're going to start, we always start with breaking in stories.
Great.
You're just a kid from New Mexico.
True. Actually, I'm now officially a preteen. Possibly an adult.
Or a tween.
Oh, yes, exactly.
All right. You went to University of Boulder and you got a degree in English.
I did.
And then you knew you wanted to come out here to pursue a career in writing.
That's good.
Did you know you wanted to be a screenwriter? Talk about coming out here to L.A.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a writer, but that's one of those things that there aren't a lot of jobs. You've got novelist, you've got screenwriter, you got TV writer.
Copy ad writer.
Exactly. And so I knew, well, there's a lot of jobs in L.A. I may as well go there because that's the place. You go where the jobs are.
You started in 1998 on the TV show To Have and To Hold. Is that right?
Yes.
As a PA?
I was a production assistant on that wonderful television show.
And
all of 11 episodes.
But you were there for every one of them, right?
All 11 episodes, yes.
So what was your first experience like? Just keeping your eyes open in the TV universe.
Again, I'm a kid from New Mexico, as you say. I'd never done any of this. So just seeing a camera was exciting. Just seeing actors doing lines was exciting. Like being in LA, it was all extraordinary to me. So I now look back and I was the most naive kid, but at the time it was just exciting. It was exciting to actually get people coffee, believe it or not. And so I think that worked well for me. I didn't even know better, but not knowing better it can work to your advantage in this business.
Totally. You then went on to Snoops again as a PA, right?
I did another David. The good news there was everyone that did David Kelly. I worked on so many shows that just kept getting canceled, and the great part about that is the more shows that you work on that get canceled, the more people you meet because they all scatter off to other shows, particularly writers. And so I would just meet all the writers on To Have and To Hold, and then I went to Snoops, as you say, and Snoops was in the David Kelly compound, so you would meet everyone on The Practice and Ally McBeal.
So when Snoops ended, you then followed Molly Newman to Fox, is that right?
I got a job as a writer's assistant. Molly was one of the writers on Snoops, and so I got a job working for her, and she got one of these overall development deals, which they still give out, even though they just canceled,
They canceled a lot of them using the force majeure contracts during the strike, yeah.
But it was a job where essentially she wasn't on a show, and so this was a period sort of in the late 90s where there were lots of writers who had deals, but they weren't on shows, and so they were all these people developing shows. It was great. It was a great experience for an assistant to meet all of these writers who were all creating, because you never knew where they were going to go, and so it really was the ideal situation for me in terms of meeting other writers.
A lot of people don't even know what writers' assistants do. Obviously, you're not writing their scripts for them, but
right.
Are you collating pages? Are you handling getting treatments out and stuff like that?
I suppose it differs for every writer has their own needs and what they do. So it goes case to case. But I would say, for the most part, you're answering the writers' phones, you're scheduling their meetings, you're getting them their lunch. You're getting them their lunch. You're getting them their lunch.
Sounded like you loved it.
I did, actually. I wouldn't love it now.
Right.
But at the time, it was fun. I mean, again, everyone. I come from Los Alamos, where everyone's building atomic weapons or driving trucks, and so my job's pretty good, even when I'm getting coffee.
You got to read a lot of scripts in a job like that, and I think that really helped kind of subliminally maybe train you for when you were ready to write your own spec script. Could you talk about kind of what you saw as you started going through these piles of specs and the things that you saw as mistakes that you were kind of like, I'm not going to do that when I start writing?
Yeah, it really, a lot of these things are cliches, but they're true.
Yeah, totally.
In the sense that I remember, because my boss finally she was staffing a show, and essentially that means every agent in town sends you hundreds of scripts. I think I read 200 spec scripts, and when you read them all, particularly in a condensed period of time, stuff really starts to stand out as what works and what doesn't. And the cliches of it needs to grip you at the beginning is true. It is, it's another version of the concept of Blink. Like, you have only a couple of pages to capture everyone's attention, and then it's over. And so that was always important. But even more important is most scripts I noticed didn't actually have anything to say. It was never enough to just be a cool story. I think most people would say, I got a great idea for an episode, and here it is. But very few writers would write a script that said something other than, hey, wasn't this cool? Wasn't this a cool story? And the writers that really honed their message within the script stood out instantly. And I can honestly say, of the 100 scripts, probably only 5 actually did that.
You told me when I interviewed you for the article in Creative Screenwriting that what you really also realized was that a lot of people go after the all too popular shows, which makes a lot of the specs kind of bleed together. And you did something that I want you to explain that I thought was really smart, actually, when you wrote your first spec that kind of launched you.
Yeah, the whole idea in the television business of how to do specs, it's this whole art unto itself, because you're not actually writing an episode that's ever going to air. You're not actually, creating something that is that you even intend to sell. It is you are only creating a gussied up resume, essentially saying, I can write. And so there's a whole separate art to it. And part of that, part of what goes into that is knowing your competition. And so, for instance, at the time, every single person was writing a Sopranos. Sopranos had been on for probably 3 years at that point, or 2 years, I'm not exactly sure. But of the scripts I got, I either got 60 Sopranos or 60 West Wings. West Wings was also big. And at the end of the day, you read, they all blur together. They don't stand out. As much as you'd like to believe that, if your competition is all these other specs that are sitting around, so you want to try to be ahead of the curve. You want to try to be the hot new show rather than the old show. And so you just try to guess. And so the 6 Feet Under pilot had come on, and it had aired once, and I said, okay, I'm guessing this will be a good spec. But it was a pure guesswork. I started the script that night and finished it, by the time 5 or 6 episodes had aired. I don't know exactly sure. I don't know for sure. But I know that there was not a lot when I started sending it out. People were excited to read 6 Feet Under at the time. And so I always tell people, you've got to be ahead of the curve, because once you're behind, no one cares.
It was smart. You also, in your first script, kind of used those principles that you learned about grabbing people in the first 10 pages. Not only did you do 6 Feet Under and you made the right bet that it was going to be a show that was going to hit, you also wrote a really crazy episode. I'd love for you to just give people a pitch of like what you did in your first 5 to 10 pages and why a town like Hollywood reacted so well to it.
I did put as much deviant sex as I could possibly fit into 5 pages. I mean, it really was. It was this guy hanging himself with a prostitute, and he's paying her to watch him almost die, and then she lets him die. Like, it was very sort of brutal but funny, and at the same time. And what was great about it, I mean, the guy was so unlikable, and he was, I don't know if you remember the show, but then the dead body sort of stays throughout the episode, and he was so unlikable. And I kept thinking, like, wow, I really made this unlikable character. And I was shocked when every agent who read it was like, I love that guy. That guy was I really related to that guy.
Most agents kind of would if it's auto-asphyxiating.
That's right. I so didn't expect that at all. And then once I went out, oh yeah, you know your audience. But it's like they definitely responded in that regard.
Talk about getting it out then, because I mean, it's one thing to have a good script. It's also important to be able to get it to the right people.
Right.
How'd you land your first agent through that, and then obviously get it over to the Whedon camp?
Yeah, so I mean, that's where all of the all the people I had met as a writer's assistant came in handy. I mean, I essentially just started Xeroxing it and handing out to the people in the building. And
Which
luckily, they all, the thing is, it's one of those weird things in Hollywood. And I try to tell this to other assistants who are coming up, which is there is no correlation to whether or not you're a good writer to whether or not you can get somebody's coffee order correct. However, if you cannot get somebody's coffee order correct, they are not going to think you're a good writer. They will not. It's just true. Like, I can't tell you how when you're doing these jobs, these PA jobs, and you can't get the basics right, they're not going to help you. Like, the professional writers are not going to help you because they don't believe that you want it bad enough.
Wait, is that true now that you're on a show and you have your own assistants? When somebody doesn't get the order right, you're kind of like tough customer?
Look, at the end of the day, you don't want to be a dick because it's hard to get these things right. But you can just tell the people that care, right. And there's no correlation. That's the thing. It sucks because it's not like a good writer it gets a good coffee order. They're in fact the exact opposite skill set. But no one's going to help you if you're not helping them at the end of the day.
Well, right. You had also endeared yourself to a lot of people in the writers group because you were computer savvy and they weren't, so you helped them print out their scripts back in the day.
Yeah, I tell the story that I got to meet everyone because I knew how to work computers and I could help. No writer knows how to print. I don't know why that is, but no writer, they can't print scripts. And so I was constantly, and they're, we're a very high stress breed. And so they would all constantly be running into my office going, help me print. And I would say, okay, calm down and help the print. Then these people were ready to help me when I would just say, hey, can you read this and give it to your friends? And that's essentially how it happened. People start passing it to friends, and one of those friends was Marty Noxon, who was at the time an executive producer over at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she got her hands on the script and read it. And it was one of those great sort of Hollywood moments where I had sent it out. I heard nothing for 2 weeks to all the agencies, and then one day, all the agencies are calling, and Buffy and Angel, which was the spinoff of Buffy, Angel didn't realize that Buffy was reading it, essentially, the showrunner. So they both called to offer me jobs the same day. And I said, wait a minute, David Greenwalt was the showrunner at Angel, and Buffy called first. And I said, but Marty just called to offer me a job. And David, he was like, what? And then he's like, I got to go talk to her right now, and hangs up, runs upstairs. And apparently they tell me later that they sort of started yelling at one another about who got to hire me. So,
but before that, how'd you decide on your agent?
It was all sort of happening at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Weirdly, and so it's you go.
Was this also time during staffing season?
Yeah.
Oh wow, you really hit a big triple score there.
I totally all of the things that they tell you will not happen.
Right.
Which is don't try to staff during staffing season. No one is looking to get no agent is looking to sign anyone during that time. They don't want that. All of those things happened. So I can just say they do happen. It works to their advantage to tell you otherwise. They want you to believe that it is impossible. It is not impossible. This is what happens.
You wound up on Buffy in the 7th season.
Right.
And the first script you wrote, to my knowledge, in 2002 was Selfless.
Correct.
And they didn't give you a lot of time for it, to my memory. Talk about just that experience of really kind of being on the outside as a fan, respecting the show, and then being thrown into the fire knowing that this is your first gig. A lot of pressure. Oh,
it was terrifying. I mean, Buffy was my favorite. It still is. It's my favorite television show in the history of television. I love that show. I loved it at the time. I still do. And so I was positive I was going to fuck this opportunity up. Like I was just like, this is going to be horrible. It's just going to go badly. And I was intimidated by Joss Whedon, who was my showrunner there, and I knew how great he was, and I didn't want to let him down. All of the I'd never been so terrified. Then what happened is there's sort of a pecking order to how they assign episodes, and so we had a staff of about 8 of us, and what happened was everybody had a baby. Our kid Marty Noxon had a baby. Doug Petrie had a baby. Somebody else had a baby. The David Fury had to go downstairs to write an Angel episode. Jane Espenson had to go across the way to write a Firefly. The entire staff left to go do other things. So it was just me. And I remember Joss was, so usually you have this team of people that are ready to help you. They were all gone. And when it was time to do my episode, and I remember Joss calling, he was out on the set of Firefly directing. And he says, okay, well, do you guys have anything? I'm like, yeah, well, I've got some ideas, sure. He's like, okay, well, who's there to help you? And I said, no one. And he said, what do you mean, no one? I'm like, they're all gone. Everybody's lost but me. And so he said, oh, okay, well, why don't you come out here on set? Which was, in hindsight, it worked out perfectly because suddenly I could stand out. I could talk to my boss one-on-one, which, usually takes a long time to sort of develop that rapport. I just got thrown in the deep end right away. And so we were sort of off and running. I just sort of stayed with Joss 14 hours a day while he was directing for those 8 days. And we figured out the episode together and just went off and wrote it. And I was so lucky in that regard because when you work with someone that close, you can get a sense of what they want and what they're looking for.
So how fast did you write it?
I think I had 5 days on that one, maybe 7 days. Yeah,
okay.
Which is the longest time you have.
Yeah, I thought it was shorter. I thought they threw you in for like a tough weekend or something like that.
No, it's certainly there. By the end of that season, I had to do a script in 48 hours, which was brutal.
Right. Which script was that?
It was a script called Dirty Girls.
Right.
Good title.
Great title.
But that one was 48 hours.
48 hours. That's terrible too. But so the lesson you really learned is make sure everyone on the writing staff's pregnant or on other projects.
If you can somehow get your writing staff pregnant.
Well, so actually, speaking of what you learn, what did you learn from working with Joss? What did you learn about his style and his technique?
I mean,
that stuck with you.
There's so much. It would be hard to quantify. I mean,
in the article, you said that he's really uncompromising about how he breaks his story.
Yeah.
And he will not move forward in the process until the story is broken and ready to go.
Right.
Is that something that's really stuck with you for like the pre-outlining stage and an outlining stage?
Absolutely. I mean, I know I certainly, there's writers that just sort of say, I start with the scene and then I see where it goes. I'm not one of those writers. And part of it is just habit. Part of it, because when in television, you're on such a tight schedule, you don't have time to see where it goes. Like, you just don't. If you go down a wrong turn, you're screwed and you're shooting that episode. So you have to get it right before you start writing it. And so the thing I learned with Joss always was the way to make these decisions under a tight schedule is know what your script is going to be about. Like, it's always very simple. It's always, it's always a very sort of simple lesson or what exactly you're trying to say. But once you know that and you know that this is what this particular story is about, all your decisions can be made based on that, because it's very easy to start putting in scenes because you think they're funny or because you think they're cool or you think like this is a great thing. But if they don't service the bigger picture as to what it is about, they got to go.
So would you break it down as an outline, as a treatment? What was your...
Yeah, in television, you just sort of, you write it up on a whiteboard so you know every scene. And then at Buffy, we would write probably an 11-page outline. And go from there. Was
it just basically plot points and scene breaks and stuff like that, and little bits of dialogue as you'd find them? Yeah, no real method to the madness, or was there something?
Yeah, there's sort of, every show has its own rules. And Buffy, we wouldn't put dialogue in the outlines unless it was really key to understanding the story for the studio, because essentially you're just writing a document for the studio to understand what you're trying to do. And so you wouldn't put dialogue, you would just kind of explain it in script format.
It's really incredible because you went straight from one dream job to another as you went from Buffy and Angel over to Alias as it was ending, and then you wound up writing the episode Outlaws in the first season of Lost. What was it like kind of making that transition over to Lost? And you weren't yet staffed, to my knowledge, when you wrote Outlaws, right? Because you were so heavily involved in the other projects.
Yeah, the way it worked is much like Josh, JJ had just sort of his own building, and so Alias was in one part of it, and Lost is in this other part of it. And so one of my friends from Buffy, his name was David Fury, he wrote for Lost. And so we all sort of knew each other. It's just, it's like the guys down the hall. And I immediately loved Lost. Like I read that pilot and saw it way before it had aired. I just loved that show. And so, I bet Damon, because Damon, who wrote the pilot with JJ, and my boss now at Lost, he was convinced it wasn't going to be a hit, and I bet him $100 that it would be a hit, and I have it signed on my wall, that it's a hit, and so it's officially a hit. I have the $100 to show you, I just said, look, if I can be of assistance in any way, let me know. I'm here. I like writing.
I like writing. That's
essentially. It's funny, but
you should have cards made.
It's true though. Like when you say that, it comes true. I go in there and I say, guys, if you need help, I'm willing to help. And then just went back to my duties at Alias, and then lo and behold, as things happen in TV, things fall apart. Particularly on a first season show, there's always massive chaos, and they ran thin, and they needed someone to come in and do an episode really fast, and so I was able to do that.
It's interesting because on that first episode you wrote it solo,
right,
kind of like your Buffy stuff, but then everything else since then you've written with a partner. How does that work? The splitting up of duties, are you guys together when you're writing?
Yeah, every show is different. At Lost, it was sort of like a normal show. Every writer sort of writes their own episodes, but halfway through the first season, Carlton Cuse, who's our other showrunner, he kind of came out and he has a system he likes to double up, and so that everyone co-writes together, and it keeps things switching. And it's really just an efficiency model to kind of keep the train rolling along. And so from that, if you look at it, starting probably season 2, everything is co-written from that point on. It's just a managerial decision.
But so, are you guys in the same room together when you're writing, the two of you, or whoever?
I'm
you're
usually not.
with?
I mean, we all break it together, and then we stand in front of the board and say, "Okay, I'll take this half, you take that half."
Cool.
Or this, sometimes like an A story is more of a piece than a B story, but most likely it's half and half. You just split it down the middle.
I swear we're getting into this movie, but how long?
These poor bastards.
I know.
This is not what I'm here for.
How long do you have when you write an episode of Lost? What is the standard time that you guys generally have to write it?
I guess it's anywhere from a week at the most to 24 hours. Like we certainly have
24 hours.
Yeah, you never do that individually,
right?
But you'll have those episodes where all of us write the episode. It certainly happens.
Now, just because there's a lot of Lost fans, especially that are listening to this podcast, we're not going to get into anything spoiler specific like the Dharma Initiative details or the Oceanic Six, but people always question how much is known when you're looking at your season Bible about what's to happen by the end of the season and the beginning of the next season and stuff like that. Chris Carter had the same thing when he was doing X-Files. What could you tell us, just not specifics, but about the kind of plotting you guys do when you're setting up stuff this season that you've already figured out you want to pay off next season? Or is there really less of that and it's kind of let it grow organically as it happens?
It's sort of a combination of both. At the end of the day, you sort of know your big tentpole moments. It's sort of like writing a script. If you sort of know your act breaks in your structure. And, at Buffy, we would break it down. The first 7 episodes were Act 1. The next 7 episodes were Act 2, and then the last was Act 3. And so you would know, okay, here's where the big turns are going to happen for the season. And then you sort of leave yourself room to improvise or deal with catastrophe. Because, on Lost we've had actors quit on us. So you can plan out these giant 7-year arcs for these people, and then they quit. And so as much as you want to be able to say every single bit of it is planned, it's not. These are humans. These are people making shows. Bad things happen. You have to be ready to improvise on the fly. And so you just sort of pick your moments, and your big plot moves. And part of the fun is being able to surprise, as with all writing.
Something that was really endearing that Lost did that just was cool was the usage of flashbacks.
Right.
And now they've gotten into flash forwards.
Right.
And just talk about the concept to actually make that decision rather than just do backstory, to kind of do a forward front story where you're giving the audience traces of who's living, who's not escaping the island, and stuff like that. Because it's just interesting that you went from flashback to flash forward.
It was just at a certain point. The fun thing about Lost is you have the ability to switch it up, and we never wanted to get complacent and say this show, here is the formula. Like, there is no formula to Lost. Like, we will switch it up all the time. And so we knew that we were getting to the point where people just expected it always had to be flashbacks. And once you sort of get to that point, it inherently starts to get boring. You want to sort of spring something new. It was always sort of the plan to sort of say, this thing is going to continue to evolve. Season to season, this show will evolve so that it's never what it used to be.
Just like with Joss, JJ is quite a visionary for television, and he really pays attention to his scripts. What would you say is something that you learned from working with him on those two shows as we move into Cloverfield territory?
I mean, JJ is the master of just sort of launching into the story and getting you hooked. Like, he is the master of the hook. There's just no way around it. Like, that guy knows how to put asses in seats, as they say. Like, he has such tremendous respect for the audience, and he has such a short attention span at the end of the day that he wants to say, let's get off and running, and I don't have patience for the nonsense. And so you sort of you just sort of take those sort of lessons and you combine that. At least I do. I combine that with Joss saying, but let's at least know what it's about, and you sort of starts to form at least my voice as a writer.
August 2006, JJ gives you a phone call.
All right.
What did he say?
Sounds so dirty. So he called. He was in Japan, and he calls and says, "Drew, I got this idea. It's going to be huge. It's huge. It's going to be huge. Are you interested in it? It's huge." And I said, "Okay, if it's huge, I guess so." And he said, "Okay, but I can't talk about it right now." Okay.
It's possibly the strangest lead-up.
Yeah, well, no, not if you know JJ. Truthfully, I would get a call like that probably every 3-4 months. So you just never know. And sometimes it's like you'll get the call back and be like, I've got this idea for this T-shirt. What do you think? And I'll go, great, that is huge, great. And sometimes it's this movie. So it's always exciting, though. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it is always fun. So he said, okay, I'll see you in a week, because he was in Japan. And so then he came back in a week into the office. He said, come on in, I got this idea. And he says, I want to do, I was in Japan and I see all these, I see Godzilla everywhere, and it's such a cool part of their culture. And I started wondering why we don't have that anymore. Like, why don't people do giant monster movies anymore? Why aren't they working in our culture right now? And they said, and then it just made me start thinking it would be cool to just shift perspective on it, because it's so big. I want to do something intimate, and so I thought, what if we shot it handheld from a video camera? He's like, and that was basically it. He said, he's like, that's my idea. And I said, I love that idea. Like, it's funny because I always go into these going like, I don't want to do more work. I'm in the middle of a TV season. I don't want to say yes to these things. I'm always looking for reasons to say no. And that one I went, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, sold, sign me up. And I think a week later we pitched it to Paramount. Like, it was very fast. I've been very fortunate in my career, and this is no exception.
Put us in the room on that pitch. I was told I think you told me that basically once that pitch happened and it was accepted, that there was just suddenly the blackout that the public's now kind of seen about the movie, in which it had no title, nothing was going to be known, there was supposedly no assistants in that meeting. I don't know if that's true. You tell me.
No, it is true. Not only is that, they didn't, JJ, we knew, even before the meeting, JJ said, he told the Paramount people, I don't want this out, and this always gets out. We're not telling our agents. We'd like you to come here to us so we can just bring the people that need to know. And we're not even going to tell our assistants about it. Like, we're just going to keep it, at the time, the 5 of us. It was JJ and I, and then some guys from Paramount, Brad Weston, and Dan Levine, and Brian Burke. And so we all sort of just sat in that room and said, look, we're living in this age where we know too much. We just know too much about what everything is. It's very hard to surprise people anymore. And this is all JJ was saying. I want to surprise people. I want a trailer to finally come up and people to go, wait, I haven't heard anything about that. Like, I want to actually surprise people.
Just like back in the pre-internet
back in the day,
days.
Like, we would get so excited about that, and you would truly be surprised. And I feel like that is a magic that we've lost, and we're going to continue to lose it. That is probably going to go away, in the next 20 years. It's just probably not going to happen. But in the meantime, we're going to fight really hard to keep it that way, but it's just too difficult.
So in that meeting, did you have your story beat out, or was okay? So it was just kind of a pitch, like what he told you over the phone.
Yeah, we fleshed it out more. I mean, we fleshed out the basic structure. You know, the sort of basic structure. It's very similar to what's there now. JJ's he knew he wanted to start it on a rooftop with kids too. That was the other 20 somethings. That was the other part that in the very first meeting he sort of had figured out in his mind, that because he knew you wanted to be looking down. He's a very visual guy, so he's like, you want to be looking down the street so you can start to see stuff. And so we just sort of went from there, and it really was much like all episodes of television that we sort of do. A lot of times it just starts with, wouldn't it be cool if? Like that's just a question, and we just start going from there. And so you figure out some cool stuff to happen, and then we pitch it. Like,
so were you given a greenlit budget in that room?
Yeah, not in that room. No, I mean, essentially.
But they said go forward.
They said go start writing.
Did you know that you wanted it to be? Obviously, they knew about the format, so they
Right.
couldn't derive the budget.
No, I think, and again, I don't know. I'm a little fuzzy on the business side of it, but I know JJ from the beginning wanted to do a $25 million movie. Okay. My guess is he probably had made his agreement that he was going to try to bring in some $25 million movies. I don't know that that's.
Well, and that's what the budget of what this ended up.
And so, no, when we pitched it, it was like, here is our plan for a $25 million movie that is not going to feel like a $25 million movie. Now, the entire time we're pitching it, and the entire time I'm writing it, I'm sitting there going, there's no possible way we can make this movie for $25 million. I was like, oh, God, they're going to hate me. Like, we just lied to them. I looked at JJ, I'm like, we just lied to them. There's no, because JJ's like, we're absolutely doing it for $25 million. Don't worry, I got a plan. And I'm like, do you understand what we're doing? We're blowing up New York. We're bringing down, we're having helicopter crashes and a monster and, missiles. JJ, you're killing me. And it read like a $100 million movie. And he just said, Drew, don't worry about it. And I was like, JJ, I'm worrying about it. He's like, that's my job. I'm going to worry about it. You just write it. And so all I had to do was shut up, because they would keep calling me to say, hey, can we make this? I'm like, yep, absolutely. No problem. We've got a plan in place. And, look, to JJ's credit, he absolutely had a plan in place. It is all because of his vision that we were able to do it for that price.
I've interviewed Kurtzman Orsi before, who've worked with him a lot, and they said that when he breaks a story, he doesn't like to really be in an office. He likes to go out to a deli or a good coffee shop or something like that. What was it like to break something so secretly, kind of in public? I mean, because that had to have been strange.
No, there was absolutely a couple of times when we were at coffee houses at, say, I remember we were at a Starbucks, and he's talking about these giant monsters, and you can see guys typing on their laptops, and they're looking over. But the thing is, no one knew, because nobody knew that we were doing this. Whereas if he started talking about, here's what Captain Kirk is going to fight, right. It's on the internet. Like that guy in the coffee house can overhear this. No one knew what the hell we were talking about. It just sounded like nerds talking. Just like, hey, I'm like, yes, a giant monster will punch something, and he's like, yes. That's what we'll do. And so
it's like the video game Rampage.
That's exactly right. Like, it's hard to formulate news out of that if you're overhearing that conversation. Right. So it just benefited us.
Well, so how long did it take you guys to break the story?
Let's see. So August, we pitched the basic idea. I started writing the outline over the holiday break. So, I don't know, September, October, November, December. 4 months, somewhere in there.
You told me in the article you took a long time on the outline, and it ended up a 50-page document or so. Yeah. How long did you take, and how long did you have as the clocks were kind of ticking?
Yeah, this is another sort of fun challenge. JJ always likes to promise things, but it works. It's weird. He's right. So, but he's like, yep, you're going to get the script in November. And I'm like, no, there's no way they're getting the script in. Stop it, JJ. And he's like, nope, they're getting it in November. And I'm like, we haven't even figured it out yet. How can there be a script? He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So I said, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. And so I didn't start until they thought they were going to get it. Around November, they started calling saying, where is it? And I'd say, I haven't even started. And then JJ would say, don't say that. And so I said, it's coming along. It's humming right along. But I started over the holiday break. And so I basically just locked myself in a room for 2 straight weeks and wrote a 50-page outline, which is really just a product of I've gotten a bad habit at Lost, because our outlines, for a 60-minute episode at Lost, our outlines average about 35 pages in the script, which is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but it's what we do. If you put the outline into format, it actually ends up being longer than the script itself. So it's ridiculous, but it's a habit that I've gotten into, and it's hard. At the time, it was hard to break. I was just like, I'm going to write it as detailed as possible because I knew how behind we were, and the more detail I could give the studio, the more they could say, okay, something's actually going to happen. And so I did that over the break. I gave it to JJ essentially to say, are we in the right bandwidth? But the story was all sort of there. I mean, it was full of dialogue. It was full of all the characters, all the set pieces. And he said, yeah, you know what, this is so detailed, it makes sense. Let's just give it to the studio like this. Because I said, look, I'm not going to be able to start writing the script until, because, once the holiday break was over, I had to go back at Lost. And so I said, realistically, it's just not going to come in. We keep promising it. And we had a release date by that point, like a tentative release date. And I was like, we should probably write it first. But this is a funny JJ story. And this is where he sort of gets this confidence. And they would always tell me this story, and it would drive me crazy. But he tells the story about how he was sitting in the theater for when the first Armageddon trailer came up. There was the very first Armageddon trailer came up, very exciting, and he's sitting. His producing partner Brian Burke is sitting next to him in the theater, and the trailer comes up. The crowd gets very excited. JJ turns to Berkey and goes, I guess I should go finish writing it right now then. He likes to work that way. He likes the sort of that level of chaos. And so I can't say that it's fun. It is fun, but certainly causes a lot of stress. But
well, after having such a detailed outline, it allowed you to write your script with kind of lightning speed after approval.
That's right. It certainly, and that's again partially TV training. We work so hard on the structure and the outline and all of that the writing is actually the fun part.
So how long did it take you for Cloverfield?
That's a good question. I think I turned in the first draft beginning of March, which we didn't turn into the studio. We just turned in and realized we had made some missteps and sort of did this. The nice thing is JJ's arrangement is that and Paramount was great to their credit. They allowed us to sort of say, look, give us time to get it right before you start giving us notes. And they were very trusting. They read the outline and they're like, look, we love it. We love what you're doing. And you find out later that they have some notes, but they let us see if we could address them first, which we did. And so we sort of inherently read it and said, okay, there's some problems. Let's change some stuff around.
But you told me, I think, that you did it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks sounds about.
First draft.
I guess because the outline went to, because I wasn't. We sent the outline to Brad Gray, I think, at the end of January, and it got greenlit off the outline. So he read it. His first response, I believe, was, "You're going to make this for how much?" And then JJ said, "$25 million." And he said, "Okay, then you've got a green light." So it was greenlit. We had a production start date before I started writing the script.
Interesting. Now, one of the interesting things about it is obviously that it focuses on the characters and their relationships and kind of the emotional journey of going through that night.
Right.
And it doesn't have as much in the front story with the monster.
Absolutely.
Their paths cross. Was there ever more of the monster in earlier drafts, or was it really always that way? Because some people have tried to debate it was a budgetary concern as to why, and I think they're missing the point of the movie.
They're not entirely wrong in that we knew it was. There's a limited amount of stuff you're going to see with the monster, but it was a much more aesthetic decision. We didn't want to. It was not what was interesting. It certainly wasn't what was interesting to me. It's not what was interesting to JJ. Once Matt Reeves came aboard, the director, it certainly wasn't what was interesting to him. It just felt like for this movie, and every movie's different, but this movie, that wasn't the point. And that was decided very early on. Very early on.
One of the conceits of the classic monster movies, there's always a guy in a white lab jacket there to kind of be, Professor Exposition and tell you where the monster came from, how to defeat the monster, what his weakness is. That was brilliant that there was none of that in this movie, and it was just kind of the visceral experience. Talk about battling that with exposition, because obviously it's something you still had to confront.
Absolutely. It's funny because an early draft, we would joke we want to pretend like the Bruckheimer version of this movie is happening, and we're missing it in a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern sort of model. And so I would write that. There's scenes, particularly in the Bloomingdale scene where Marlena dies. Early drafts, it sort of had sort of this idea that we would pass the sort of dashing young hero and his plucky, paleontologist love interest as they were debating, we've only got one shot at this thing, and we would be like, I'm sorry, I'm bleeding to death, and veer off to the right, and we did it, and it was very funny. Like, it would make us laugh, but then it totally broke the sort of fourth wall there. Like, it just felt like we were winking at the camera too much, and so we took it out. But it certainly informed our aesthetic of the movie.
Obviously, the poster is iconic. The missing head on the Statue of Liberty. Where did you guys get that idea? Because to my knowledge, you said it was during a brainstorming meeting in JJ's office, which I think is cool.
It is very like. If you want to eliminate the magic, here we go. No, there's a reason magicians don't tell you their tricks. But we are sitting.
This is an easy one.
This is an easy one. We're sitting in the office, and JJ has a big poster book of Escape from New York, and he just goes off on a rant. He just starts going, you know what I always hated about this poster? I hated that this is not in the movie. There is this Statue of Liberty head, and there's Kurt Russell, and look how cool it looks, and it's not in the movie. Let's put it in our movie. It's essentially what he said. He's just ranting about it. We should just put this in our movie. And, I go, okay, sold. End of Act 1. That's essentially what it is.
As you were kind of talking about doing a movie that's the destruction of New York City to an extent, to a large extent, was there ever a consideration about just the weirdness, the politics surrounding 9/11? Because, like, The Watchmen, the comic book from the 1980s, it always ended with New York City getting destroyed. And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, that some of the rumors are that they've changed that ending out of wanting to, be polite or not bring back those memories. You guys kind of just went for it and didn't really politicize it, but I'm sure that there had to be someone at the studio kind of saying, can we not do that? Or was there not?
No, there were definite discussions about it. As you would want them to be. It's not like anyone was being cavalier about it. We felt very strongly about what we wanted to say and what the point was, and we recognized that this type of movie is going to bring these feelings up, and that was intentional. Yet we also felt very strongly that we weren't making a movie that has deep political lessons to it. That was sort of the point. Like, we want much, again, to us, the inspiration was Godzilla. It always will be. That is a movie about a culture that got hit with a nuclear weapon. That's what that movie is about. Yet it is not in the, it's more overt than our movie, but it's there, and so we certainly said, look, it would be disingenuous to pretend like we are not a culture that has been affected by this. You can't do not just and truthfully, not just a New York movie, but a disaster movie in our culture. We now are. It is a new world. You cannot look at disaster imagery and it's not called back to where you were that day. It just doesn't happen. And to me at least, it felt like more of a crime to pretend that it didn't happen than to be afraid about what you were going to say.
One of the other interesting things that you added to this big monster movie, and we play poker together. I've always tried to pick up on your tells. This is finally the one I picked up on because you flat out lied to me, sir, as you should have, because I know you.
Wouldn't be the first time.
I know you signed a lot of contracts, but when I asked you pre-release about the possible net rumor of other creatures dropping off the main monster. I have your tell audio recorded. I know what it is now, but it was a great idea. You said, well, I couldn't possibly think of something that creative. That was your response to me. But I think it's really great. It plays great in the subway scene. How did that idea come about?
But that is just truly there's a level of desperation when you're the writer of a giant monster movie that you just don't know till you have to do it. And the problem is, particularly when you have characters the way we're doing it, but every monster movie actually has this. It is very difficult to get intimate with a giant monster. It is very difficult. Fear usually is based on smaller levels rather than bigger things. Like the great scary sequences that you can think of. It's much more intimate, and it's very when you have a monster that's 50 stories tall. it's very difficult to truly get intimate with it. And so in walking through it, we had a lot of cool monster sightings, and we knew where we were going, but I just kept feeling like I want to see them interact. I want to see it get up close and personal. I want to see our characters fight and get hurt. And the problem is you can't fight and get hurt in the middle of a movie, a 50-story monster, because you're going to lose. And so it just sort of, it just was born out of necessity more than anything else, of like, we need this level of intimacy with our problem.
Well, it also kind of works in the horror genre because the fear of unknown, obviously your lack of exposition, they don't know any information, and that completely surprises them, obviously.
Right.
So that works. Now, just beating out kind of the horror structure, when they're in that subway tunnel, it's very dark, and, this movie's pretty freaking tense,
Right.
You also very smartly programmed a joke or two in that sequence when they're talking about, who Superman is?
Right.
Was that a part of your outline, or was that something that made it into script stage, just knowing that humor is a great place for tension relief?
It's just, I just like doing it. I mean, at the end of the day, that's where I really have fun writing, and I can remember that sequence in particular. It just, what's not fun is writing the action sequence where the monster is smashing cars. It sounds fun. It's not fun. It's not fun because it's 3 pages and all the pages are black and it takes forever, and you just really, there's nothing rewarding. But making jokes about that action sequence is fun. And so it is sort of just like, I guess that's just my personality. I just like to sort of do that. It helps keep the process enjoyable.
Screenwriters are often told not to use too much description on the page.
Yeah.
But in a first-person subjective, immersive experience like this, kind of going back to all the way like the film noir of Lady in the Lake or this year's Diving Bell and the Butterfly, I would assume that you would probably need some extra description because you're also kind of tracking the camera as a character. Is that what happened, or how did you write that?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because that is actually one of those rules that we take for granted that I don't agree with. Like, they say screenwriters should not put camera moves in their script. I think that's ridiculous. I understand why it happens. It's because most directors don't want to read it and they'll get angry. But if you're working with directors, and again, this comes from my TV background where the directors do what we tell them to do. So I work on very visual shows. Like, so we have a very visual aesthetic, and I learned starting with Angel, which was one of the first letterboxed shows on TV. Like, we just changed the thinking. I mean, it comes from Joss and JJ, who are both writers and directors themselves, and said, there's nothing wrong with putting camera moves in scripts. There's nothing wrong with describing these things. Like, this is our language and our storytelling. We got to stop being ashamed of doing that. Like, why are we feeling so browbeaten because we have an idea for how a camera move should go down? And so that sort of has carried over. Then combine that with Cloverfield, where the camera is a character. So every shot has to be in the script. Not only every shot has to be in the script because of unlike, say, a movie like Blair Witch, where the conceit is you found multiple pieces of footage that have been edited. Our film theoretically has not been edited. Like, it is one camera move. It is one piece of footage, and so every cut has to be in the script. And so it was weird. I mean, it was an entirely new language. And the first draft, that I had to sort of feel my way through as I would go, because the first draft was much more standard. Scenes would have distinct beginning, middle, and ends. They would have, characters, they would go on for a standard, say, 2.5 to 3 page length. And when you realized you can't shoot that, it doesn't work because everything's a oneer. If you look at the movie, every scene in the movie is one take. And so, you can't, and so you have to, everything for the most part has to be really short. And then you pick your battles where you're going to do the really long takes. But if you did it too much, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel written. And
you also had to justify any time that HUD was turning on the camera and what he was filming, right?
That's right.
So it sounds like a long train of arguments.
You have no idea. That is definitely, Matt Reeves and I have probably lost a good 3 weeks of our lives arguing about that very point. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the most brilliant thing that you did narratively that some people I've seen online have not gotten at all was, as you just said, it's an uninterrupted piece of footage as it was recorded. but people are confused. Some people are confused by the flashbacks
Right.
of their great day that they had. I think it's brilliant because obviously they were using a camera that has a flash card for recording and a tape. And every time he's jostling the camera, the tape starts playing, which becomes the flashback. Where did that idea come from? Because I think it's great.
It's funny. I don't remember where it came from. It came from the very early on the brainstorming sessions between JJ and I. I don't remember exactly how it started, but it was much more. It was going to be a sex tape. I think we had been watching.
Sex tapes.
Yeah, sex tapes. I think we've been watching a lot of sex tapes. No, they were very prevalent. They still are, but at the time they were really, I think the Paris Hilton, they were everywhere. And we thought, well, what if that's sort of what you're cutting in on, and then you can cut in and out of it, and always miss the actual interesting stuff. Because to me, not that I've watched the Paris Hilton tape multiple times, but the interesting stuff is not the sex, it's her answering the goddamn phone in the middle of the sex.
If you say so.
You don't lie. Three of you know what I'm talking about. And so we would, that stuff was sort of interesting. At the end of the day, we threw it out because, again, it's ridiculous. It's not the movie we wanted to make. We realized that we could actually use, at first it was a gimmick. Like that, the idea was it will be a gimmick and that will be it. And then we realized, no, wait a minute, we can actually inform the narrative journey, because the other problem we realized between draft 1 and draft 2 essentially is it's real. When you're doing something essentially in real time, it's very difficult to have drastic character change. It really, the more you actually put into it, the more false it feels. Like a standard screenplay, you will have a large degree of change. Like, whereas if you're in real time, your degree of change needs to be very small, or it's going to feel fake. Like, people don't change that much. Yeah. They do change under extreme circumstances, and I feel like, that is what this movie is about. But you have to be very controlled. At least we felt that we had to be very controlled about where those changes happen, and this allowed us to back up the change a bit more and gave us a little bit more wiggle room there, as it were.
No, that's good stuff, and I didn't even remember there was a phone in that tape. So anyhow, moving on. Your writing has always displayed a knack for, and we're going to open it up to the crowd in a minute or two, your writing has always displayed a knack for managing character moments with action. It's almost like something starts, it's interrupted by action that's annoying but very intense, and then either during the action or right after they're kind of resolving. Is that on purpose? Because, from everything you've done with Joss and JJ, it's a distinct style. They share that style, right, and you have a knack for it. It's
certainly what I've always responded to. If I look at the films that I love, it is films that sort of shift gears oftentimes, and oftentimes in the same scene. Joss is sort of the master of that. Like, there are Buffy scenes and Angel scenes and Firefly scenes that have horrible violence and the broadest comedy all within this much of the page. They're right next to each other. He was never afraid to shift gears constantly in the middle of the scene, and it just keeps it interesting. It's just an aesthetic that I like. It just feels more real to me. I just feel like people are making jokes even in horrible situations. It's sort of our part of our humanity, and to sort of go away from that feels false to me, at least. But maybe my friends are just dicks. What
do you do to battle writer's block if you get it?
I panic a lot, Jeff. I panic. I cry. I call usually Joss, and I say I can't do it anymore, and then he tells me to suck it up. That's usually what happens. He tells me to stop being a baby and hurry up because I have a deadline. And that's usually what does it. Luckily, I work with great people. I've always worked with great people, and that gives you a safety net. Joss and JJ give me a safety net. When I have writer's block and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, as we all do, I can call them and say, I'm about to fail, and they go, good, fail. And just knowing that you're allowed to fail, it takes it away. It really does. Like, you need this sort of, as creative people, we need that sort of safety in saying, like, I'm going to screw up, and I'm going to write a scene that totally does not work, and I'm going to go down these paths, and that stuff always leads to panic, and to me, at least, that's where the writer's block comes in. But once you know that's okay, then it sort of goes away, and then you have help, and you have a peer group, and I've been very lucky that I have such a strong peer group to help me with these things.
And it is all right to cry.
It is. I hope.
When when you had your ending point of them professing their love
Yes.
in a cavalcade of bombs,
Yep.
how did you guys decide that that was going to be the end of the movie? I could see studio interference wanting them distinctly living or not being, kind of a downer ending like that. I think it's a great ending, but I'm just curious the kind of discussions that went into arriving at that place.
We knew it very early in the sense of it was pitched. Again, it came out of the JJ and I sort of at the very beginning when we were doing the "Wouldn't it be cool if," and we knew that we did not have the type of movie where Rob would have this amazing idea, and if we strap this bomb to this particular rocket, we got one shot at this, and we're going to jump into the monster's mouth and blow it up. Like, we knew that wouldn't be our movie. We couldn't have that level of ending, and so it forced it to say, okay, well, what's this movie about? Like, what are these characters about? And then it sort of came from there. We knew that we wanted to get to sort of where we got to in the ending, but it was never sure that was going to be the ending until Matt Reeves came on. Because it's in the outline, and people started to that was the first sort of second guessing, and Matt came on and said, we cannot change this. This is why I want to make this movie. I do not want the sort of standard, we've killed the monster and everything's wonderful and let's go off into the sunset. He felt very strongly, and I backed him. And the nice thing is, you're absolutely right. There was plenty of concern about that level of down ending. This is the nice thing about having a $25 million movie, which is we agreed. They said, we're leaving money on the table, and we said, yes, we are. Like, we're not being irresponsible here. We know that doing that ending is going to decrease our box office. Like that, there's no doubt about that. But because we're a $25 million movie, that's okay. Like, we don't need to. It's not so much I do feel like it isn't us going, well, fuck you, this is how it has to end. It is true, that's how it had to end, but we knew we would get away with it because it was so cheap, at the end of the day. So
I'm gonna try and piece this together here, just because I know our podcast listeners are going to be fanatics, and you don't have to answer this question because I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions. I know you well enough to know that there's some things you don't want to reveal behind the curtain, and by the way, that's perfectly okay. So I'm gonna piece together what I saw as your very interesting viral marketing campaign. Rob is going to be VP of marketing. That's why he's going to Japan for a new drink, Slusho, which is, of course, made by the Tagrado Corporation. All of this is from the web, from your viral marketing. There's a whole series of side stories and news pieces in which we learned that the Tagrado Corporation has one special ingredient for Slusho, which is mined in the bottom of the ocean. There's a YouTube video showing the Chue, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, drilling station off the coast of Connecticut being destroyed for mysterious reasons, and some debris being jettisoned out of the water. And then there's a whole bunch of fighting between Tagrado's corporation and an organization known as Tidal Wave. Tidal stands for Tagrado is destroying our oceans. So there's a whole bunch of debate going back and forth between did the oil refining, at the bottom of the ocean for Slusho possibly awaken the monster? Did Tidal's hatred and possible sabotage of that rig awaken the monster? And of course, let's start with that. How involved were you with the viral marketing? What do you think of it? All these side stories kind of filling in these weird blanks right before the movie starts.
I want to be clear. I do not speak for Cloverfield. I speak for me. And this is more an aesthetic vision. It's not just about this movie. It's about all movies. I personally believe the only things that are ever important are what's on the screen. I truly believe that. Like, I can point to countless examples of that. Ridley Scott can say that Deckard is a replicant. It doesn't mean he is a replicant. I think he is a replicant, don't get me wrong, but all that matters is what's on the screen. If what you are saying is important, it would be on the screen. I understand that's frustrating, and I understand...
It's not frustrating.
But I understand, look, that we live in this world where now internet marketing is being treated as though it is canon. It is not canon. Like, it is marketing.
So were you not involved with any of this?
I was not involved with any of this.
Okay. Because these other companies, Slusho and obviously Tagrado, they've been seen in other JJ projects.
Yeah, and look, and so to have degree, that doesn't. It could be canon. You could ask JJ, and you could get a very different answer than the one I'm giving you. But from my point of view, everything that is important to this movie is on the screen.
How about
Absolutely.
this? How about this? Taking that comment that everything that's important to the movie is on the screen.
Yeah.
There is a shot at the end of the movie when they're in the Ferris wheel at Coney Island. And behind them, you see something small falling out of the sky. Now, I hate to bring it up again, but there was something on the web, part of the viral marketing, saying that what was falling out of the sky might have been a tidal wave satellite that was trying to spy on the Tagarado operation. Or some people have been speculating that it is actually, since it's taped a month before the event happened, some semblance of the beginning of the beast falling into the ocean. Now, that's in the movie.
That is definitely in the movie.
What is the meaning of that, sir, if you would be so kind?
I mean, again, this is one of those, it's a philosophical question, which is, if we felt it was important to this movie that you had some idea about, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Tagarado,
yes,
whatever the hell it is, it would be in the movie. So,
but skipping that, it is in the movie that something falls from the sky.
Something falls from the sky. That's what's important. So it's more important what your interpretation of that is. And at the end of the day, I could answer that. I could tell you all right now. You could say, yep, it is the monster falling from the sky. It doesn't mean it is. Like it is what it has now been given to you. I can say absolutely, I have my interpretation of what that is. It is within this movie. And for me, and I keep it quiet because, unfortunately, I do believe we live in this world, or fortunately, where we ascribe way too much value to the creator's intent. Like, even though it is important, this is my own personal viewpoint, once the work is done, it now belongs to all of it. It's now part of our lexicon. It's what you believe. Like, if you look at the film, why would you show something falling from the sky right there at the end if it was, for instance, a satellite from some offshore Wellington? It doesn't seem to make sense. I'm sure somebody can make that argument, but if, for instance, it does seem to make a bit of sense if at the end of the movie you saw the monster falling from the sky, you could probably make that argument a little bit more cleaner. But clearly the filmmakers, it is not important. Like, it is not important to definitively say what that is.
That's cool. I'm going to ask.
I understand that's frustrating.
No, it's not.
It is intentional. It is.
But I mean, obviously you
intentional.
scripted it, which is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great shot. I'm going to ask this just so you don't have to deny anyone in the audience this answer, because I know that there's not a chance we're going to get it. But for the record, could you explain the title Cloverfield, and could we talk about some of the other titles that were kind of in the batting cage that were never used?
It was always, the very first drafts of the outline always had Cloverfield on it. So I will say that the Cloverfield was always what I wanted to call the movie. Absolutely. Like, it was always sort of the intent, and it came early on. And
Paramount Marketing hated that title.
Oh, yeah. By the way, as they should.
Right.
That's a terrible title. Like, in terms, if you're trying to sell
That's not
something,
$45 million opening weekend.
that's right. If
title.
you're trying to sell something, who the hell's going to go see that? Like, again, it was one of those arguments. I'm on the phone, and the marketing is saying, like, how is Iowa going to go look at the screen? How is the 45-year-old male going to say 2 tickets for Cloverfield? That's just not going to work. And I'm like, I know you're correct, but it's cool. Like, there's a reason. Like, I feel like there's a reason. And again, much like as you were talking about The Last Shot, I could state the reason, but it's very clear it is meant to be obtuse. I believe that the film answers why it's called Cloverfield. I believe it is in the film. I believe you can make that argument, and it says exactly what I want it to say. But it's very obvious that we don't want to explain it. We would call the damn movie Monster, or Monstrous, if we wanted
that wasn't
to be
one of the other
obvious.
working titles, right?
Sure, they threw out. There was a lot of titles thrown out, But at the end of the day, I think passion won out. I mean, we were fortunate. Like, a lot of, as with any sort of project, you compromise, and there's places the movie had to compromise. But we certainly won more than we lost, and it is to Paramount's credit. Again, these are compromises that you can win when your movie's cheap. Like, if this movie cost $200 million, there is no possible way it's called Cloverfield.
Yeah, because this is the monster that attacks New York City.
Yeah. Who knows exactly what it was?
What were some of the other titles you guys batted around?
To be clear, I never batted around any other title.
Okay.
Part of my defense against
because I'd read titles like
Krakatoa was in there. There were definitely
Volcano,
Krakatoa was cool.
Shiro, which is I think the Japanese word for white.
Yeah, that was definitely up there. There was a whole bunch that were batted around. Part of my defense was to just never offer anything else. I just said I just wanted it to be called Cloverfield. I felt very passionately that was the title of the film. And
most people on the internet are convinced it's because JJ's production offices are by the Cloverfield exit of the 10 now.
And I guess to that I would
there's
say,
nothing wrong with that.
Well, there is, because to that I would say, if we would do that, we would be dicks. Like, we would be assholes. Like, really? Like, again, we put our passion into this, for better or for worse.
But the sequel, La Cienega, is going to be great.
That's right. But to just name it after where the thing happened to go by, like, it needs to have more behind it. Like, it's just not true.
Another question I know is not going to get an answer, and it doesn't need one, but I've got to ask it. Matt Reeves said that he said in a recent interview that he feels the monster is a baby, separated from its mother, and thus going through an infantile rage. The army's shooting at it just gets the baby more frightened. Is that something you agree, disagree with? Was it something that was a part of your discussion?
That was definitely never discussed. That doesn't mean it's not true.
Okay.
The other thing, here's what you need to understand, and because this is really the first. I mean, I've gone through it on TV shows, but there's a new level of scrutiny with features, which is you talk in interviews, and you have to learn that you can't say things off the cuff because it gets picked up. I know Matt. I have a feeling he was just talking off the cuff, and suddenly people latch onto it because they so desperately want answers. We live in this age where it is very unsettling to not know something, and so even if any sort of comment that people will take as gospel because we just need that answer so badly, and I think you can make a case it's because of the internet, that we live in an age of instant answers where you can click on something and you'll get an answer, but that doesn't always make it right. Like it makes it more difficult to sort of create, particularly when it is important, when a lot of times in films and television, the question is what is important rather than the answer. And so it's this weird balance, and I sympathize with Matt's comment.
I asked those only because I know someone in the audience would if I didn't.
No,
I figured I'd take the bullets.
Question,
I knew what your answers would be, and those are totally fair. Let's open up to the crowd for a couple questions. You, sir, in the orange hat. If it was offered up, would you ever want to write the Bruckheimer version if it was offered as a sequel or additional film?
That's a good question. It's one of those things that on a gut level I would say no, but that could change. It all depends on that take. Like suddenly you can find a new way into it. It's never meant to disparage the Bruckheimer version. To me, it's just what's exciting is to do something new. And so there's certainly a Bruckheimer version that is new. I just don't see it yet. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow I won't.
Another question, right there, you, sir. Great question. What were the five scripts that you remember reading when you were a reader? What was memorable about them, and what's happened to them since?
Yeah, well, to be clear, they were TV specs. They weren't movie specs that were sold. So they just got other people jobs, and they never. It's not like you would ever see them. But I do remember running into those writers. I think one of them was this guy Alex Taub, who now works on Eli Stone. Like they all actually became professional writers, or they were professional writers at the time. So it definitely stood out. Like I remember thinking, oh wow, there you are. It actually did work. So it's more you'd run into the writers.
Cool. Yeah. Another question right there, you, ma'am. She was really on edge about not being able to see Lost during the strike, which is good because it made America notice that there was a strike.
True.
What do you think? Do you think the strike was worth it? All said and done, just for the record, the final ratified paperwork has still not come through.
Correct.
Today's vote was in principle on ending the strike based on verbal agreements.
It does seem like the strike is at an end. I mean, it was such an overwhelming majority that I think it's safe to say the contract's going to get ratified. I absolutely think the strike was worth it. I say that with respect to the hardship that it has caused, but I truly believe that we were fighting for our future, and that fight had to happen, and that they never were going to just give it to us out of the goodness of their hearts. I don't actually begrudge them of that. That's their job. Their job is to not give it to us and keep their pennies. Our job is to stand up and fight when we need to. And so that's what we did. Am I happy with the terms? No. But do I think that we need to take it now? Yes. Like at the end of the day, we only have as much leverage as we're willing to fight for, and it is clear that enough people are ready to go back to work that we have to take that deal at the end of the day.
Well, and it also starts a precedent, at least for new media, which is important. Another question. We're going to go to the middle of the theater. You, sir, in the glasses. Great question. Could you talk about some of the battles you lost in the script, either with the studio or the director?
The first battle was I desperately wanted it to be rated R. I really wanted it to be extra violent and nasty.
But it's interesting because the marketplace dictates that a PG-13 movie will give you more box office. So maybe that was the compromise.
Believe me, it's not even just like maybe. That is, PG-13 is so much more important to them than it is. Like R is cooler, but PG-13 is where they make their money. And we realized that we could, again, I kept fighting, but it wasn't enough for me to walk off the project because I knew we could still do what we wanted. So that was the first one. And Matt really wanted to make an R movie, and we lost that battle. The second battle was, so PG-13, you get to say the word fuck once. That's the rules of PG-13. And it has to be in a certain way. You cannot say, I'm sorry, are there any children here? It's far too late. But you cannot say, I'm going to fuck that person. You can say fuck, like, oh, fuck this. So you can never use it as an actual verb. So a lot of thought has to go into where you're going to use that word. I put it in the movie. It's right before the monster hits. Jason is talking to his brother, and he says, you need to say fuck the world and hold on to the people you love. It was very important to me that was where I said the word fuck, because it was like, this is, to me, the thesis of the film. And that was what it was all the way through. And then it started, they started realizing the movie was going to do well, and apparently there was a sizable contingent of, they have to put the
reason for the R rating.
The reason for the PG-13 rating on there.
PG.
Yeah, right. And again, this is actually something I did not know. Or I guess I sort of knew it, but I didn't realize how it can change movie to movie. It says PG-13 for reasons of strong language, violence, implied violence. They have all those different terms for it. Apparently, people actually read those damn things. And apparently, in the Midwest, they're not taking their kids to it if it says strong language.
Strong violence is okay, by the way.
Look, it enraged me. I have to say, it absolutely enraged me that we would. Everybody involved got a very loud, angry, and completely belligerent call from me about why the word fuck should be in this movie, and I ultimately was wrong, and they changed it. They changed it over my stern objections, but at the end of the day, I'm a writer. These things happen.
Any other studio battles that you remember?
Truthfully, those
other than that, like
there were lots of battles, but in terms of the ones that
with the script, obviously,
that I lost, that I wish I had not, those were probably the two big ones. Which, by the way, if that's true for any production, you are truly charmed. Like you are, so I'm definitely thankful for it. But those were the two that certainly set me off.
You, sir, in the gray shirt. Then we'll move over this way. The question was in regards to the look of the monster. How much did you know on the page as to the way it was going to look?
Yeah, we started when. So I was the first person technically hired on the production as the writer. I think 2 weeks after that, we hired Neville Page, who designed the monster for us. And so long before we had even started the outline or the story, Neville was on and went to work. We knew we wanted a new monster. And so he was definitely creating stuff before I was writing, and we continued to create through the entire process. And it just sort of, I would see what he was doing, and then I would tell him what I was thinking, and we just sort of worked as we went. And it's just sort of created as we went.
Another question. You, sir, in the front row. The question was in regards to making the monster both familiar but also new at the same time, and then showing it by segmented body parts. At first a tail, at first a claw, stuff like that. How much of that was scripted, and what went into your decision-making process? Yeah,
we absolutely knew we wanted to make it feel both familiar and new. I feel like there is a danger in going completely off the rails. Like you want to sort of see a monster that, at least in this movie, that you could sort of get your head around, and it would be if you were so busy just trying to understand what it was, it would take away. So it would take away from the experience. You wanted a degree of familiarity. So we tried to do it, and so we started with just that sort of basic structure, and went from there.
Another question. If the thesis of the film is hold on to the people that you love, talk about the fact that pretty much most of the people that are loved in this film slip away, which is kind of maybe just a bummer of the life cycle. And also, and how did the handheld format serve that actual message? I would guess that would be kind of an intimacy issue.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think those people slip away, but I guess I don't view them as slipping away. I view them as dying in service of the cause. Like they go down on the battlefield because they're trying to defeat the enemy. You know, the enemy is not the monster in this film, and so they're not slipping away. They are they are casualties of a greater good, at least in my mind.
Well, and a lot of people when they're dying are trying to get close to their loved one. You know, like the separation on the bridge.
It's very much. I mean, you can almost argue that everyone dies in the film, doing exactly that, and so. With one notable exception, but it is sort of the point of the film, and I guess it's funny because I think Matt Reeves and I are the only two people that do not view the ending as bleak. I feel like that was never.
Well, there was the up-tempo moment of the final image of them having fun and saying, you know, today was a good day, so it's kind of like savor the good days when you got them.
Right. That's which is true, absolutely. But even I guess maybe this just says something why I need therapy. But I don't necessarily view death as bleak per se. I mean, it is sad, but it is how you die can give. I mean, we're all going to die, and so how your death happens can give meaning to your life. And I feel like that, you know, is at least what we strove to do with this film.
Another question. In the middle in the red hat. The question was, Variety reported Matt Reeves signed on to do a sequel. I would add to it, surely more than one camera must have captured designate Cloverfield. So, I mean, what are some of the ideas batted around? Are you going to be involved? Is it going to be the Army's point of view?
Truthfully, I was flattered that I was mentioned in that article. It was nice, but there has been no conversations whatsoever. I mean, we've been on strike, so no one can talk about it. It just hasn't come up, other than the fact that it's weird. When your movie does well, this is something that's new to me. You suddenly get all these phone calls on Saturday morning from people, and every one of them was like, great job, hey, start thinking about the sequel. And so I'm like, oh, okay, but we're on strike, you dicks. So no, the answer is no. There has been no discussions whatsoever, but that may change tomorrow, to be honest.
I hope it does. All the way, we're going to move to the back of the theater for you guys, and then we'll get you to you, sir, right in the middle in the hat. Yeah, no, I mean, it's always great because obviously you can't just outline everything and pre-program it. Great question. He's curious about what were the other things that kind of jumped out at you that weren't in your outline, that were kind of discoveries when you were writing your script?
I'd have to say the main thing was HUD and Marlena's love story, sort of. It was sort of implied. It was always sort of there, but it started to become more to me. Like it certainly was where I became much more interested in it as I was writing. Like it's all, you know, small little beats, but that was never sort of in the outline. That was where it sort of kind of came through the process.
Another question right there back in the middle. It's an interesting question because, I mean, it is on the screen. I mean, the question was in regards to the fact that there is a Dharma Initiative logo in the beginning of the film. Will there be some sort of a crossover or craziness between Lost and Cloverfield, even a mention back and forth?
The answer is maybe. That is one that you're going to have to watch.
That's right. Cloverfield is the smoke monster's friend. Right there, all the way back on the aisle. Question was in regards to, obviously there's been a lot of great comic book superhero movies. He's a fan of your writing. For the record, you've also written comic books for Buffy. Right. And on Lost, you co-wrote with Brian K. Vaughan, who's a comic book writer. Will there ever be... Yeah, will there ever be something that you will kind of adapt that's maybe a property you've always been interested in that's coming from comics?
You know, the answer is yes. I hope so. You know, I'm a huge comic book fan. I was at... this is a comic book nerd story for you. Just Brian and I went this weekend. Frank Miller had a birthday party, and I almost cried as I was as we were at his. I've never met the man, and I could barely talk. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is 13-year-old Drew would be so disappointed in me because I'm about to vomit. I'm so excited to talk to him." So you know, the answer is yes. There's nothing on my plate right now, but it is absolutely a dream of mine.
Just because you brought up the word vomit, this is a funny story that I really wanted to bring up. I had friends that I was at Sundance when it came out opening weekend, but I had friends that were emailing me. They had seen it at the Grove here in Los Angeles, and somebody had vomited in the theater because they could not handle the shaky camera, and the theater actually started handing out Golden Compass popcorn bags to everyone that was walking in the theater as possible vomit bags, and said that anyone that needs a refund is feeling ill in the first 30 minutes could get one. What is your view on that, and how does it feel to know that your writing evoked some good old-fashioned vomit?
It's not the first time, let's be honest. It's funny. On one hand, I feel really bad. Like, who wants to go to a movie and vomit? That sucks. That is not why you're paying to go vomit unless you're weird.
I'd pay to watch.
However, there's the punk rock side of me that's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I will take this to my grave. Like one of the most exciting things that happened to me during Cloverfield, is that opening night where you go and you sort of peek in on the theaters, and we're peeking in at the Grove. For some reason, we found certain theaters make you vomit because of the way the screen is tilted if you sit close. In certain theaters, you're fine. It was much like I remember the Star Tours ride had a similar thing. If it was slightly off, everyone would vomit. And so we found that a couple places would cause the vomiting. So the Grove was one of them. So we're at the Grove, and we're peeking around the corner, and I watched this poor girl. She's probably 14, and she vomits, right? She vomits all on herself. It's heartbreaking. It's not funny. Stop. You guys are jerks. So she vomits on herself. She's with her mom. She sort of vomits on her. She's got popcorn. She starts walking. Her mom's like, "Oh God, honey, let's go over here." Starts walking towards the door, up the stairs. The girl stops, turns around, sits down on the steps, and keeps watching the movie, and won't leave. And I'm like, okay, that girl is cool. Like that girl, this movie made her vomit, and she wants to still find out what's happening next. That is not the case for everyone. Lord knows lots of people vomited and yelled and screamed and left. But if just that one girl, just the movie, enjoyed the movie enough to vomit on herself and continue to watch the movie, like that, am I ever going to get a better compliment than that? I have reached the point, the apex of my career, and it will all be downhill from there.
You should retire. The great news is that it was at the Grove, so she could go buy some new clothes afterwards.
The Grove is mad at me right now for pointing that out.
All right, so a few last questions over here on the aisle. You, sir. Two great questions. If you weren't writing, what would you do, and what inspires you when you're kind of not in the mood to write?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know what I would do if I wasn't writing. I mean, I would be doing some job and be unhappy. Like I would, work at a video store it wouldn't. There isn't it was nice knowing when I drove to LA, I didn't know anybody, but I knew I could do nothing else. Like I wasn't allowed to fail. Like in my mind, because I had no other skills. Like that, this was it. And so it sort of mentally made me say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I honestly don't know the answer to that. And then what inspires me to write? I think it's reading. I mean, it's always been reading. Like if I've got nothing, I'll just sit and read. I mean, I'm at my happiest when I'm reading. I'm not at my happiest when I'm writing. I'm at my happiest when I'm just sitting around reading. And so I'll just procrastinate by doing that. And usually that sort of jars the gears free.
There was somebody else right over there. Yes, you, sir, in the gray shirt. Production question, what kind of camera was used?
Don't quote me on this because I don't know my tech very well. But it's actually two cameras. One is the Viper, which means nothing to me, but it's Jeff, you're a camera guy, right?
Yes, it was definitely the Viper. I don't know.
The Viper, I believe, is the camera that they shot. I brought this up with you, and you corrected me.
I know. I used to know. I'm so sleep deprived.
The Viper
now.
is a fancy. And then there was just a handheld stuff. So all these sort of big action effect sequences are the Viper, but a lot of it is actually the actor, TJ, who is amazing, who plays HUD. He was amazing. He truly was amazing. Like he held the camera for probably 40% of the movie, which is absurd. Like that would actually happen, but he was so good, and we felt like, particularly like the party scene, any sort of scene like that, it felt better to actually have him do it, and he was so game and so good at it that it sort of worked.
Well, the really tough stuff that really is technical spectacle is that, scenes like when they're on the rooftop,
right,
it's still shaky camera, but everybody knows it's a green screen.
Right.
But those green screen people got to follow the camera shakes that the human is causing
Right.
to match their background plate, and they did it pretty seamlessly. You were talking about HUD having the camera. A lot of times in movies like these, even on Blair Witch, they talk about the points at which they depart from the script and kind of get into the realm of improvisation. On every movie that's made, I don't care if it's Hitchcock or Kubrick, there's always a point where the actor kind of goes off script.
Right.
And whether or not it remains in the film is always up to the director. What was that like in this film, if you're able to talk about it? What was your involvement on set? How much were you on the set?
Yeah, I was on set about half the time because halfway through shooting we had to go back to work at Lost, and so I had to go back to I had to go back to my day job, as it were, and so I was there about half the time, and we knew that we wanted. It's sort of the case with everything, which is you want to get the skeleton right of the scene. Particularly on this movie, we really wanted to allow for improvisation, and by we I mean everyone other than me, because I just wanted them to say the words right, but. That's not.
As you should, as any writer should.
So, if you ask what my job on set was, it was mostly to just complain that they didn't say it right. But usually you'd get it, and then you'd allow them to improv. And we had some amazing actors. Like TJ is stunningly good at improv, so he would do that. But Matt likes to shoot. He would shoot certain of those scenes that he'd shoot 40 takes of to just see what you could find, and you would find a lot of amazing moments in those improvs.
No, and the emotional sequences, telling his mom that his brother died, I mean, stuff like that, I'm sure was right on target with the script and had a lot of emotional resonance. Some of the dialogue, though, was interesting from the Army. The phrase "hammer down,"
right?
I love that. Where did that come from?
It's funny because I think it was a JJ thing. I think he's
but
a
it's awesome.
Truck driving fan. I don't know. It came late. It was called something else, and we all felt it just wasn't cool enough. So we just brainstormed. That's one of those things that if you're a nerd, that is a wonderful way to waste time, is to think about what cool military call signs could be.
What was your toughest scene to write? What was the scene that really kept you up at night? You had to keep coming back to again and again.
That's a good question. Wow. I don't know. That's a really good question. They didn't. What scene did we rewrite the most? Jeff, I don't know.
That's okay. I mean, obviously, it wasn't the ending.
It was not the ending. I love my favorite things to do. I love writing endings. At Lost, I'm almost always stealing ending. I always vote to take the ending. I always want to take Act 5. Act 1 is never fun. Act 5, or in TV, Act 5, I always like the ending. For some reason, endings are way more fun to write than the beginnings. So it wasn't. If the hardest scenes were probably scenes in the party, for sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. There's other projects that have been talked about kind of before the strike. What could you tell us about some of your upcoming stuff? I mean, I had read something about a cabin in the woods with Joss Whedon. What could you tell us about that? Anything?
Yeah, Joss and I wrote a movie called The Cabin in the Woods. And we got it to the place where we were ready to go out with it, and then the strike happened. So I'm assuming I'll call him tomorrow, and we'll figure out what we want to do with that. It's hard. It's going to be hard to see what the landscape is like, but now we can try to do something with it. It's a script we are both very proud of and very excited for people to see. So
can you pitch it, or is it kind of under wraps?
No, it's
not adapted from anything.
But unlike Cloverfield, which is the most obtuse title of anything I've ever worked on, this movie is called The Cabin in the Woods. So
it's pretty clear.
Yeah, it sort of pitches itself. It's about a cabin, and it's in the woods.
I like it. Well, you've been very generous with your time the night before you're going back to work.
Thank you all for coming.
Give it up again for Drew Goddard.
Thank you to you guys.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Thanks again to Drew Goddard for being so generous with his time on this historic evening that the WGA strike officially ended via a vote that was finalized during our screening of Cloverfield. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.